Do it again. Oh yeah. Oh, she's mint. So, alright, what's up everybody? So right now we're going to be tearing apart the intake manifold on the V8 so I can loop the heater core lines, because I know a lot of you guys are freaking out about how I blocked off the rear section. I did a little bit of research. I can keep it that way, but at the same time a lot of people kind of recommend that you actually loop the hoses under the intake manifold and then block the rear section off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the intake manifold off, take off all the wiring and the ECU wiring and the injectors and the fuel rail and everything. We're going to switch the lines underneath, which I'll show you guys in the next clip what exactly is going on there. And then we're going to cut those lines, loop them with rubber hose on both ends, and then leave the rear section capped off with that plug that I did in that video a couple of weeks ago. So we're going to do that stuff, and then I'm going to show you guys kind of how we're doing it, and then that'll be one step closer to actually getting this thing ready to rock on the track. It's pretty much done in terms of wiring, which again I'll show you guys that stuff in a little bit. For all the guys that want to do this V8 swap as well, and there's not a lot of write-up on it, I'll kind of show you what happened there. And then yes, we're going to bang this out and I'll show you guys what's going on. Alright, so right now I'm taking off the water pump. Behind the water pump are those two lines I was telling you guys about. Those actually feed inside the pump and then feed into the back of that rail behind the bank 1 and bank 2 cylinder heads. So pretty much we're going to pull this back, and then the two O-rings inside the hoses will pop off, and then we'll be able to wiggle the hoses out, and then I'll show you guys the back section of the heater core area where everybody kind of freaked out about how I capped it off, and I'll kind of explain a little bit more about what we're going to be doing. So we're going to pull this off first, and then I'll show you the rest as we get through to it. Alright, what's up everybody? So today is day 2 of the intake and the coolant reroute. I had to go get intake gaskets and a water pump gasket. So we're going to throw that stuff on. I also have to put a gasket on my wagon. I have to do the valve cover gasket. So we're going to do that as well real quick and mash out all the gaskets on all the cars. I also bought a heat gun so I can heat up the stuff that I put in the back of the coolant block off plate. I'll show you guys that real quick. So we're going to use that to heat up the JB weld in the back of these two hoses. And I'm just going to loop them so everybody just, you know, calms down about that. And then everything should be good. So we're going to get to that stuff, and then we're going to keep moving forward. Alright guys, so as you just saw, we finally got the last bit of JB weld out of the back of the water pipes. So pretty much what we're going to do now is run a hose from either side and just loop it, throw back in the two water pipes that run underneath the valley pan, assemble the water pump, and then put the new gaskets in for the intake manifold, and that should pretty much stop any overheating issues that may or may not arise. I've heard some mixed reviews on this, so that's kind of why I decided to just say fuck it and just take this out and then just do it like the normal way that people usually do it. Sometimes my ideas aren't always correct, so I'm just gonna bite the bullet on this one and just do it this way. Hopefully that way I don't have to take the engine out for, you know, like a third or fourth time here over something stupid like some JB Weld. So that's pretty much what's gonna happen. I'm also gonna see if I can fit a temp sensor in here, because I actually realized that you can pull out this nut in the back of the rail here, so I'm gonna check that out as well. If I can, cool. If not, I'll still run it in the water neck, not a big deal. But yes, we're going to get that done now, and then we're going to keep moving on. Okay, so we got the coolant reroute on there. This is actually a hose off the E46 charcoal canister and secondary air pump area. So on an E46, it would sit somewhere kind of around here in that big box. The contours were pretty much perfect. I still got to push that one down just a little bit. I didn't film this part because I couldn't get the camera angle in there enough with my body in the way, so I just kind of smashed it on, and then I'm just going to show you guys it now to make it easier for everybody. So this is on there. I already checked for the flow. Everything seems to work. I ran a bit of water through it and it came out the hole, so everything seems to be good. I just got to throw 2 clamps on that. Clean up the rest of this area real quick. Get all like the little bits of shit that's stuck under the intake out, like all the plastic clips and stuff. Pull out all the rags for the cylinders. Go over to the manifold. Pull out the gaskets on the manifold. Put in the new ones. Clean up the manifold just a little bit, kind of brush it off with some air, make sure there's no debris stuck to it. Take that, put it back on the engine, and then put everything down, torque it all down to spec, and start reassembling the front section again so we can finally get this thing ready to rip. Alright guys, so we just took all the rags out of the intake ports. We got the rubber hose on, the clamps are all done. We put a little sealant on the 2 coolant passages that run along underneath the valley pan. So we're getting ready to put the intake back on. We just put the gaskets in it. I just took a bit of Scotch-Brite pad real quick and I just kind of scuffed up everything. Gasket orientated here just to kind of clean it up and make sure it's a nice tight surface for the new ones. So we're going to go ahead and put the intake back on, plumb back in the CCV system, and then start to kind of torque everything down and kind of button it all back up and get it ready to drive. Alright guys, so that pretty much wraps up the intake and the coolant rerouting system that we were doing. Everything's back on, all the computer stuff's back on, the harness is back on. The only thing that we got left to do, which we'll do in the next video, is we got to run the coolant expansion tank. I'm going to figure out what I'm going to use for that. I have a couple things here that I might try, but they look pretty ugly, so I don't know. I might see if I can get something nice, polished aluminum for like a 240 or something to see if it'll fit. But stay tuned for that. Like always, like, comment, subscribe. Catch you guys in the next one.
Toodles!